Welcome to Homegrown Tales, a live storytelling event held at Brews, 2 Pinot Spring in Eureka Springs. The following was recorded February 5th, 2025. And now here's Zeek Taylor to introduce the program.
My co-producer Sandra Spotts and I welcome you to Homegrown Tales. Sandra and I are thrilled to be joined by guest storyteller and our friend Shira Fouste.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. I want to remind you that the stories that you're going to hear tonight were written and lived by the people who will read them to you. Our music tonight is from musician Shain Kausey, who is a multi-genre melting pot of a musician. We're thrilled to have him, who, in his words, fits in where he gets in, pulling from his hodgepodge pack of tunes. From folk to funk, rocking till the grass turns blue, he plays it all from the heart. Please welcome a crowd favorite here at Brews, the multi-talented Shain Kausey.
Thank you very much. You satisfy all my needs by your side. No need to rock, you got my key. When I am with you, I never go without a rocky way to ride. Thank you.
An award-winning visual artist, Zeek Taylor is a recipient of the Arkansas Governor's Arts Award for Lifetime Achievement. And in 2018, he received the Idol Class Magazine's Black Apple Legacy Award. He has also done film work and has appeared in documentaries, commercials, short films, and 2 full-length movies. Zeek is also a storyteller and a writer who's performed on the national public radio show Tales from the South. A StoryCorps interview with Zeek is on file in the Library of Congress, and a segment of the interview aired on NPR's Morning Edition. He's the author of 3 self-published books, Chimps Having Fun, Out of the Delta, and Out of the Delta 2. He's one of 20 authors listed on the Arkansas and Mississippi Delta Heritage webpage who have written autobiographies about the area. His 2 Delta books have been published in 1 volume, Out of the Delta, the Anthology, by Sandy Springs Press. Here's Zeek.
I hope it's okay that I get a little political tonight. I don't think it's a time to be silent. It is a dark time in our country's history. Members of minorities in the USA are fearful that their rights and their presence are being erased by the ruling government. This is true of the LGBTQ plus community, of which I am a member. I think it's a good time to revisit a story that I've rewritten about a time long ago when many of us lived in fear and we were hesitant to be our true selves. Fearful peacenik, afraid to come out. I knew from an early age that I was gay. When I was a teen, I felt compelled to keep my orientation a secret. I wasn't ready for rejection, ridicule, and the probable bullying that would have awaited me. I would rather have died than to come out. I lived a lie. I lived in fear of exposure. When I turned 18 years of age, it was mandatory for all males to take their military physical. It was during the Vietnam War years, and the draft was in place. I was in my first year of college when I had to return to my hometown, board a bus with other 18-year-old males with whom I had grown up, and go to Memphis for the military physical. Facing the physical, I was very distraught. I had always considered myself to be a pacifist. Being in the military would have been foreign to my nature. My dream had been to serve in the Peace Corps. I really wanted to make a difference. That dream was not possible for me. Being in the Peace Corps was one way to get a deferment from the military. Only boys with families who had political pull could join the Corps. No one in my family had the pull. I've been told that if I ate lots of sugar, I would flunk the physical because my sugar level would show me to be diabetic. I ate a 1-pound bag of sugar the day before the physical. The next morning, I boarded a yellow school bus for the journey to the Old Veterans Administration Hospital on Getwell Avenue in Memphis. After arriving, I saw hundreds of young men who were also there for physicals. I studied their faces and I could sense that I was not the only one who was nervous. The physical took most of the day and it was humiliating. We were herded naked from one room to the next and examined by numerous doctors. I did have an option that would allow me to flunk the physical. I could check the box. By checking the box, one admitted that they were homosexual and they would receive a 4F status, meaning they were unfit for service. I'd been told that guys who had checked the box would be kept overnight for psychiatric evaluation. At the time, homosexuality was considered a mental disorder. I thought that the guys from my hometown would know that I was gay if I checked the box. They would have noticed I wasn't on the bus for the return trip. The sugar trick did not work. I passed the physical. As long as I stayed in school, I had a student deferment. After graduation from college, I was able to obtain an occupational deferment because I was able to secure a teaching job. Who knew that art teachers were valuable? That's not what I planned to do as a profession, but I gladly took the job in order to avoid the draft. In 1969, the government decided they would conduct a lottery to decide who would be drafted. On December 1st, 1969, I sat with many young men in a student lounge on the campus of Washington University in St. Louis, where I was attending night classes. We watched on TV as the lottery took place. During the broadcast, a military person drew from a container a birth date that was enclosed in a blue capsule. Each drawn birth date was then matched with a number that determined who would be drafted. That year, all birthdays that matched a number below 195 were eligible. Young men who received the lowest numbers were taken immediately. There were cheers and groans as the numbers were drawn. I won the lottery. My number was 281. After watching the lottery, I left the lounge and I went home alone to my apartment. My future once again belonged to me. I was elated. However, I cried while thinking about the young men who were not as fortunate as I had been during the drawing. Lying in my bed with eyes closed, I could still see the despair on their faces. I saw fear. No longer subject to the draft, I was able to quit teaching and to return to school. I enrolled in the Memphis College of Art as a painting major. I was able to resume my goal to become an artist. It was there that I was able to come out and to be my authentic self. And I vowed to myself to never again deny who I am, even in the face of death. In reality, that ain't living. Thank you. Our next storyteller tonight is my co-producer, Sandra Spotts. Sandra has written for several Central Arkansas publications and made 12 appearances telling her original stories on the internationally broadcast radio show Tales from the South. Sandra has a background in the arts, in fine arts, that began with work as a fiber artist. She has been an art teacher and has worked as a professional designer. For the past several years, she has called Eureka Springs home, where she continues her art career as an abstract expressionist painter. Here is Sandra.
Thank you, Zeek. This story is called Cruisin'. The late April winds blew restless and warm across the Little Rock subdivision, reflecting the restlessness caused by the approaching end of the school year. Unbridled energy and hormones were rampant. Dad agreed to drop me off at best friend Kathy's house for an afternoon of listening to records, experimenting with makeup, and eating all the carbs we could find in her cooler than my mid-century rancher. Throw in some teen magazines and there was a formula for junior high girl fun at its best, except for the absence of boys for flirting, at least for the moment. Bestie Kathy was a constant source of concern for my mother, who never liked any outside influence over me. In her mind, I was a blank slate, devoid of decision-making, ready to be led down the path of destruction by any friend or foe who desired. She made her disdain for Kathy known, labeling her "that little flip-tail," a smart aleck, even though she always attached her southern requisite ma'am, please, and thank yous when she addressed my mother. My mother had her pegged in some respects because Kathy was much advanced along the social learning curve and exuded budding sexuality. She kept me informed on her advancing body of carnal knowledge, although it would be many years before I dipped my toe into that pool. My mother did not know that Kathy also was a very smart, talented artist and writer, and she was filled with more angst at age 14 than water filled the Arkansas River. She also did not know I was Kathy's very shy confidant, cheerleader, and second banana, happy to vicariously live through her, at least for a while, with no intention of emulating her behavior. Dad and I pulled onto Kathy's cul-de-sac and we spotted her leaning into a car window on the driver's side. "Who are they?" Dad growled, probably more than he intended, gesturing to the pair of boys in the car. Kathy's parents, who had more to worry about with their two other children, didn't keep such close track of her. "Oh, those are guys already at Central, a year ahead." "Don't you go off with those boys, you hear? Don't you dare or you will be in trouble." Apparently, my parents never believed in the possibility of days of innocence for me or my sister, two girls who were too good for our own good. Since we hit puberty, our parents were vigilant and suspicious of their shy, well-behaved, slightly nerdy daughters, and expectant of the worst. Normally, I would have obeyed my father, but the combination of those restless winds, a heavy cloud of cheap men's cologne, and my desire to please my friend led me to defy him. I took Kathy aside and whispered to wait until our car disappeared down her street and made the turn toward my house. Then we made our move, explained to the guys that my parents were really strict and to hit it when they burned an enormous amount of rubber. We turned the same direction as my dad, and there he was, pulled over in a gravel parking lot, waiting. Kathy shoved my head down into the floorboards and followed with hers, yelling, "Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap." While my dad was a favorite with my friends for his good-natured kidding and his dry sense of humor, they also knew that his hawk-like stare could foreshadow trouble for me. We took off toward the main drag, University Avenue, and Daddy seemingly decided to abandon the surveillance. No sooner than we bobbed our heads up and back down did our family Chevy make one last circle around the block before heading down the hill. Kathy, the boys, and I cruised up University when the coast was clear, into Minuteman for Cokes, through Curly's parking lot way too many times. Our driver revved the engine, challenging another car with a school sticker from our arch rivals. The rivals stood down. We noted who was with whom, turned up the radio, tuned to KAAY, 100,000 watts of power. With little else to break the boredom, The boys soon dropped us back before 4 o'clock when Dad was to pick me up. I climbed into the passenger seat with sweaty palms and high hopes I had my story straight. Daddy asked me outright whether I had gotten in the car. And this is the only time I ever remember lying to him. The fear of seeing disappointment and disdain in his eyes far outweighed any fear of punishment. Cruising University had not been so much fun. Lying to Daddy was no fun either, even though he bought my story. Those soft blue eyes set in a raptor stare are why my sister and I felt compelled to place a bouquet of blue delphiniums, blue asters, and blue snapdragons near the altar when in later years we said our goodbyes. We knew then, and we know now, he is still and always will be watching, circling while we're cruising. Local Eureka Springs resident Shira Fouste is our guest storyteller this evening. She and her husband Shain are the owners of the Evening Shade Inn. Following Shain's retirement from the Army, they, along with their 2 daughters, Bryn and Leah, have been part of the Eureka Springs community for 6 years. Shira is a visual artist who has participated in many of the art shows here at Brews. In recent years, painting has been her medium of choice, and the visual arts are where she feels most comfortable. Even though she does not consider herself to be a writer, Shira received writing awards while in college. Tonight will be her first time to read at Homegrown Tales, and we can't wait to hear her story. Here's Shira.
I am grateful. I'm grateful for my friends. I recognize that I'm sometimes flaky, rough around the edges, awkward, silly, and sometimes downright bizarre. I love the lacy detail that a well-placed curse word adds as a descriptor to the right story. My own mother says things like, "Shira, I don't like it when you say off-color things." And honestly, that tickles me and feeds the fire a bit. It must take a special kind of person to really be able to be my friend. I do think that I have some shining star moments. Please don't get me wrong. I definitely think that the good outweighs the bad. However, one must have a certain fortitude to endure some of the shit show that comes with the Shira show. So Anne is one of my Shining Star Award winners. Anne, thank you for persevering. Let's see. It's been 37 years of friendship. Side note, math is not my thing. In that period of time, one particular little foot and mouth still reigns supreme in my mind. If you would, be kind. This is one of my less classy moments. Anne and I met when Mom and I moved to Little Rock when I was 9. We've been besties ever since. She lived one street over, a block down. We stayed at each other's houses, walked home from the bus stop together, and knew each other's families from day-to-day life. Anne was who I embarked on wicked behaviors with, like smoking behind the water tower and sneaking out to adventure the neighborhood at night while our parents unknowingly slept. She's one of the people that knows how to call me on my BS, be silent with me, talk too much about nothing, laugh at stuff that's super ridiculous or out of line, and share life's ups and downs alike. All the while, we can go pretty long periods of time without talking and then reconnect as if no time passed at all. This is exactly why she deserves an award. Side note, Anne's parents were married, mine divorced. Anne's mom, Carol, was particularly wonderful and interesting to me. Her dad worked as an actuary. What is an actuary anyway? Unlike my mother, Carol stayed home and didn't work. She loved to hoard her kids' gaming systems to play things like Zelda. She was inquisitive about things like a child in some ways. She wanted to ask us dating things, life things, and as we aged, sex things. Ordering non-nutritional food in was something she orchestrated with ease, and pizza was plentiful. Growing up, Anne's house was a playground compared to lean cuisines and alone time at mine. Sadly, Anne's dad passed away in our mid-20s. Over the next few years after his passing, Carol's inquisitiveness bloomed as she started dating her younger Harley-riding house painter, trying new things like acupuncture and finding herself. She even bought the boyfriend a Harley, went out like she was in her mid-20s, and the sex questions to us grew more and more frequent. She was a hoot. Anyhow, quick rewind to about 17 years ago. Anne and I are late 20s. We work together at the YWCA. She's the aquatics director and I the administrative director. We were a small group that handled the Y's operations. Above me was Nancy, our boss, and lateral to Anne and me was Katie. We all spent far too much time together, and we were thick as thieves. We lunched together, all gabbed on cell phones, talked about our lives, smoked in the back offices while airing out the dirty laundry we ladies had going on. You could do that back then, smoke in the offices at fitness centers, airports, etc. Smoking was one of my many wildly rebellious acts. I told you, rough around the edges. I've been beyond lucky with a long friendship with Anne. Sadly, she was not so lucky in longevity with her parents. For Carol's 60th birthday, Carol, Anne, Boss Nancy, and I all smoked, ate, and commiserated at a celebratory lunch where Carol shared her amazement at having made it to 60. That night, she and the boyfriend went to a biker bar they frequented, and when they left in the wee hours of the night, he hit a curb on a main road and she was ejected from the bike. She died that night of her birthday, and all he asked was if he could keep the bike. In spite of being in our mid to late 20s, Anne was an orphan. That's what she said. We all rallied together, our little work crew. We had big support to provide. At some point in the aftermath of unthinkable tragedy, Anne shared with us working women that she had received the most awkward of invites. She was asked to attend a celebration of Carol's life at the biker bar. The biker bar that Carol and the inebriated, negligent boyfriend had been at before her untimely death. We listened as Anne casually joked about how weird it was to be a guest at this place that she had never been, where biker culture reigned supreme. Through awkward laughter, Anne said, "What should I wear to a biker bar celebration of my mom's life?" Without a moment of hesitation, the best answer came to my mind and flowed from my mouth like poetry in motion. "You should wear one of those t-shirts that on the back it says, 'If you can read this, the bitch fell off.'" Immediately following my outburst, I surveyed the room for reactions. Let me say, it wasn't what I'd hoped for. I assume some of you may be giving me the very same look. Mouths were agape, and there were shocked faces. As I made it to meet Anne's eyes, the reality and relevance of my words set in. Then, my bestie began to laugh. She got it. She knew I was unconsciously trying to provide levity to the worst of the worst. In the many years following, this horrifyingly funny embarrassment has been rehashed on numerous occasions. Each time, I'm reminded how grateful I am for awesome friendships like Anne's. And now, for you, who hopefully will see past my oopsies and perhaps relate to how human it is to insert foot in mouth. I'm so fortunate to get to go through these uncomfortable moments. Not everyone is so lucky, and I should embrace and savor every awkward saying or doing the wrong thing at the wrong time as part of being alive. Thank you.
Let's hear it again for Shira. What a great debut here on the Homegrown stage. And now, once again, I would like to welcome my friend Sandra back to the stage.
This is called Creature from a Whole Nother Planet. One warm April evening, I stepped out onto my parents' porch, barefoot, to breathe in the fragrant air, and then stepped into the grass to feel the cool, wet slivers tickle my toes. I was 22, and Dave, whom I had recently met through my best friend's boyfriend, Michael, pulled his GTO into the driveway and jumped out with the motor running. He grabbed my arm, swung me toward his cool car while flicking his cool surfer dude bangs to the side and announced, "We're going for a ride right now and then getting supper." "Well, let me at least get on some shoes and tell my folks," I said, trying to be cool. By that time, Daddy was standing halfway out the front door wearing a scowl. "I'm going for a ride with my friend Dave, Dad. He is a friend of Michael's. Back in a little while." Michael had worked summers for my dad and had earned his respect as being reliable and trustworthy. So Dad gave a half-hearted nod as we backed out of the driveway, instantly indicating that Dave was not a suitable caller because he was male. With my awkward living situation, what I saw as giving the information as a courteous guest, my folks saw as asking for permission for parole. I shrugged my shoulders and jumped in the car, shoeless. It was the spring of 1970, and I had found myself accidentally back in my parents' nests. Months earlier, I had come home for a 2-week combination Christmas visit and respite from my fairly new marriage, which had looked really good on paper, but didn't quite pan out in reality. My projected return date went from 2 weeks to 2 months, which turned into 4 months, which turned into never. Since I had returned as a visiting daughter, the transition into returning married but separated daughter had been awkward for all concerned. My parents were terrified, cautious, suspicious, and panicked at my new status as returning about to be divorced daughter. In their minds, I now had knowledge, that kind of knowledge. If they could have legally tethered me to the gas light pole in the front yard, no doubt they would have. To my parents, an apartment, which I wanted to get, was a synonym for dungeon of decadence, and not possible anyway for me until things were settled financially. So we lumbered on as weekly I reverted a couple of years in age, and my parents became increasingly terrified, cautious, suspicious, and panicked. I pulled my door shut, and Dave peeled out of the driveway, giving Dad further indication that I was headed down Damnation Road. We pulled into the parking lot of Bruno's Little Italy, rolled down the windows, and took in the glorious aroma of garlic and marinara that was wafting over southwest Little Rock. "Let's get some pizza," Dave said as he opened the door. "I can't go in like this. I don't have any shoes. They won't allow that." "Just wait here. I'll get us in." Simultaneously slamming his door and doing the cool surfer dude hair flick. In the space of 3 minutes, Dave came back with a confident smirk. "We're in. They're fine with it." Aware that in these times suspicion ran high toward anyone who showed any clothing or behavioral tendencies that might smack of hippieism, I had to question how Dave was about to talk a barefoot, jean-wearing young woman into a fairly formal restaurant. "Oh, I just told them we're traveling from California, and during the night your suitcase with all of your shoes was stolen. We came out of our way just to eat at Bruno's because we had heard all the way out in LA how great it was. Flattery will get you anywhere. Let's go." We were greeted at the door by a solicitous maitre d' who was anxious to prove the establishment's West Coast reputation was correct. He waved toward the other side of the room, and immediately a basket of warm garlic bread appeared on the table. We ate our way through the huge mound while we watched Mr. Bruno toss pizzas behind the glass kitchen window. Suddenly, Dave pushed the now empty bread basket aside and announced, "I'm stuffed and I don't have any money, and besides, it's complimentary. Let's go." I, who had been raised with strict etiquette rules, was appalled, but I didn't have my bag. Again, he grabbed my arm, and the rest of me was obligated to follow. We jumped back into the GTO, raced down Asher Avenue to University. Soon, we found ourselves sitting on the bank of the Arkansas River, gazing at a sandbar illuminated by a full moon. I was now both amused and fascinated by this spontaneous, attractive, average Joe pseudo-surfer dude. He leaned back on his elbows. "You know, last time I was down here a couple of months ago, I was looking at that sandbar, and a UFO came from nowhere and hovered for about 5 minutes, landed, and then a strange-looking guy got out for a minute, stood there, and got back in. Then it took off and disappeared. This account had been delivered as casually as if he were telling me about his last trip to buy new socks. "Oh, you're just pulling my leg," I said with a nervous giggle. Certainly, he was just trying to make conversation, trying to make me laugh. No one says something like that for real, especially on a first date, if you want to call it that. Then I looked into his eyes and I saw absolute conviction. I felt my breath catch in my throat. "No, it happened. It's true. I swear on my grandmother's grave." He was not kidding. And for the first time since I ended up back at my parents' house, I wished that I had been as cautious and suspicious of men as they were. I began to squirm, digging my toes in and out of the sand. Then I jumped up and dusted myself off, trying to appear and sound casual. "Well, guess I should go. Need to go job hunting tomorrow. Sure had fun." We filled the air in the GTO with talk of our mutual friends on the 10-minute drive home. The car had barely stopped moving when I hopped out, waved and yelled, "Been fun, sure had fun," licking my dry lips and wiping my sweaty palms on my jeans. I bolted into the house, happy to hear the voices of my terrified, cautious, suspicious, and panicked parents, who asked simultaneously, "Where have you been?" "Just had a little Italian food," I replied, and under my breath said, "On a whole nother planet." Here's Zeke again with another great story.
My last story, in a way, is sort of a backstory for this one. You'll know how I ended up in Memphis and why. The odd couple. After receiving a degree at Arkansas State University, I worked for 2 years as a public art teacher. Even though I enjoyed my students, I soon realized that as a hippie gay artist, the teaching profession was too restrictive. It would not let me be who I needed to be. I didn't renew my teaching contract, and I left the required coat and tie behind, and I enrolled in the Memphis College of Art to further my studies as a fine art painter. No longer I had to hide who I was from students, parents, administrators, or from anyone. Art students were expected to be free spirits. I grew my hair long, pierced to my ear, and I wore paint-splattered jeans and shirts. The only time I spiffed up was to go out dancing at one of the city's gay bars. After living in Memphis for a year, I met Dick. A mutual friend suggested that he go to the bar where I spent most Saturday nights to check me out. The friend thought that I would be Dick's type. I was. The problem was, he was not my type. Dick was too corporate looking and straight acting for my taste. Still, he didn't give up. He wined and dined me and gave me gifts, Edgar Casey books, and a philodendron. He repaired the non-working wall heater in my apartment. Still, there was some hesitation on my part to commit to a relationship. At the time, Dick was a bookkeeper for a chain of Napa standard parts stores. He told me that when he applied for the job, he wore a suit and tie. When the interview ended and he was hired, he asked, "What should I wear to work?" The boss who had conducted the interview said, "What you have on is fine." Dick told him that he only had the one suit. The boss told him that slacks and a dress shirt with a tie would be okay. He added, "The shirt must be a solid color, no stripes or patterns, and the tie must be a solid color." The boss added, "Absolutely no paisley." The employees in the office where Dick worked were nearly all straight white men. They all dressed the same. The few women employees at the firm were far less restricted when it came to dress. Mini skirts were popular at the time, and the only rule the women were required to adhere to was that if they bent over, their dresses must be long enough so that their panties wouldn't show. It wasn't long after getting together that Dick started admiring my free spirit. We hung out with my friends who were best described as colorful bohemians. Dick liked my friends, liked what he saw, and he wanted to be more like us. He decided to let his hair grow long, and he added some facial hair. Before long, the white walls over his ears began to disappear, and dark fuzz appeared above his lip. When his hair touched his ears, he was called into the office at work and was advised to get a haircut. He was told, as stated in the policy handbook, that hair touching ears was against company rules. He was told that if he didn't get a haircut, he might want to look elsewhere for work. Dick said, "No, you will just have to fire me." They did. Dick made them write on his termination slip the reason he was fired, and that was because his hair was too long. Dick applied for unemployment and got it. Back then, Standard Parts, his former place of employment, like many businesses, cashed checks. When Dick's unemployment check arrived in the mail, he would take it to his former place of employment, walk up to the counter with his ever-growing hair, and cash his check. By the time the checks ran out, Dick, with his long hair, was able to get a job at Memphis State University, where he was not restricted when it came to dress. He was free. Eventually, I decided that Dick was the one for me. How could I not choose someone who, because of me, let their hair grow long and get fired? And today, after 53 years together, we are still in tune with each other. However, like most couples, we do have differences. He is very pragmatic and practical, and often spontaneous and impractical. We balance each other. We have learned that the key to staying together is to let each be his own person. I compare us as a couple to oil and vinegar. They mix well when shaken, and the mixture makes a tasty dressing. That pretty much describes who we are. However, I'm not telling which one is the vinegar. Thanks again, and thank you everyone for coming out to see us once again. Our next show will be April the 2nd. We hope you all can attend. I also want to thank Brews for hosting this lovely event. It's a great place to do this. Appreciate you being here, and here to tell us who the next storytellers will be is my friend Sandra.
Yeah, we're really excited about next time. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have a couple read their story kind of together, and that will be Al and Lynn Larson. And it is April 2nd. Okay, April 2nd. Did you just say that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And our musical guest will be Mick Bird. He's been here many times, and he's a favorite. So we hope you all join us April 2nd. Thank you for coming.
You've been listening to Homegrown Tales, a live storytelling event held at Brews, 2 Piney Spring in Eureka Springs. Join us again next time for more Homegrown Tales.